Hi, this is Bill in Illinois 14, and if Brett Kavanaugh confirmed later this week, this will probably be the last podcast you ever listen to, because women are going to burn everything to the ground. So enjoy this very special episode of Two Broads Talking Politics.
Hi everyone, this is Kelly with Two Broads Talking Politics. In my quest to talk to people in every state, today with me have somebody in Montana. So we are talking to Jessica Karjala, who is currently the state representative in the 48th District in Montana and is running for re-election. Hi, Jessica.
Hi, how are you, Kelly?
Great. So let's start with a little bit of background. Can you talk a little bit about sort of what, besides being a state representative, a little bit about yourself and then how you first got into running for the state house?
Sure. Well, was raised in Montana. My dad's family goes back a few generations here, and I raised my kids here. I think some of what shaped my views, a lot of what shaped my views was raising my kids as a quote-unquote single mom, a divorced mom. So I think that I understand some of the adversity and challenges that a lot of people are facing today. I also worked professionally as an advocate for people with disabilities. And at the same time that President Obama ran for the presidency the first time, I was becoming what I would describe as really woke for the first time. I had supported candidates before, I'd put up yard signs before, but I think my work as an advocate for people with disabilities really opened my eyes in terms of the adversity that a lot of people are facing, particularly people with disabilities, people who need and rely on public assistance programs, whether they're elderly, whether they're struggling young families, children, or elderly people. It was an eye-opening experience. I took cases through the determination process. I appealed cases in front of the administrative law judge, or just helped people with simple disability or public assistance benefits, just helping them navigate that system. I was also helping MoveOn.org register voters and started volunteering on campaigns, starting with President Obama's campaign. That was the first time we went out and knocked doors. And through, I think, my work, maybe being really outspoken, volunteering on campaigns, I was asked by my central committee to file and run for a state legislative seat. I ran for the first time in 2014, and here I am today running for a third term.
Excellent. And I think Montana has term limits of 4 two-year terms. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. We can serve 4 two-year terms in the House. We can turn around and run in a Senate seat if there's a viable seat to run in, and we can serve those 2 four-year terms in the Senate term out. The loophole is then we could turn around and run in a House seat. Of course, it always depends on the availability of a district to run in. So yeah, term limits with loopholes, I guess.
So where is the 48th District in Montana? I will admit, although I have set foot in Montana, I don't know a whole lot about it. So where is the 48th District located?
48th District is in Billings, Montana, which is Montana's largest quote-unquote city. If you count a community of about 100,000 people a city, Montana is a very rural/frontier state, meaning we don't have a lot of people. The entire state has about approximately 1 million people. So my district is in Billings. My district runs through the north central area of Billings. It's just a long, narrow corridor running east and west through north central Billings.
And what's the makeup of the constituents? So I noticed that the number of people you represent is not terribly large. I think like 9,000. But, are these people, since it's in a city, is it sort of more urban type lifestyle? What are the kinds of people that live in this district?
Sure. Yeah, each legislative district for the House is supposed to be about 10,000 people. Each Senate district is 20. The voters in my district are probably what you would call as close to urban as urban can get in Montana. Again, you're talking about Billings, a community of 100,000 people. But for the most part, yes, these are people who teach, who work in the energy industry, work in the healthcare industry. And my district runs from young working professionals, more college-educated people. There's a large demographic of retired people. It's really kind of diverse for a Montana voting district with the exclusion of, say, ag workers, people who work in the agricultural industry or who live in rural Montana. So the district borders the hospital corridor. Billings is home to the largest medical campus in the state of Montana. So the eastern part of my district is home to quite a few medical professionals or people tied to the healthcare community. As you move west, more probably folks that are tied to the energy industry or the local businesses. Yeah, so it's pretty diverse for Montana. You can call Montana diverse.
I live on the south side of Chicago, so probably slightly different.
Probably slightly.
So what are the kinds of issues that the people in this district are really concerned with? What are the things you hear about from people?
We're trying to renew Medicaid expansion right now, and because there's a ballot initiative to renew it that's asking for the state's 10% funding responsibility. So when we passed Medicaid expansion in 2015, it was 100% funding from the federal government. Now that we're approaching 4 years, the state's going to have to kick in their 10% responsibility to get the 9-to-1 match. The ballot initiative, their solution to the 10% match was to implement or levy a 33% tax on all tobacco products. And as a result, not surprisingly, Big Tobacco has come into the state and waged a big multimedia campaign against Initiative 185. So I'm hearing a lot about that on the doors. There, of course, are a lot of mistruths. So I'm dealing with that question a lot. I'm really passionate, of course, as someone who previously advocated for people with disabilities and someone who arguably understands the dire need for health care, especially for those who are at risk for chronic and or greater health care problems. You know, it's a passion for me to retain Medicaid expansion. So it's a challenge to not kind of just say to people, the tobacco companies are lying. I have to handle it a little more diplomatically than that.
Sure. So in Montana right now, the Republicans have control of both the Senate and the House. Can you talk a little bit about the legislating in the minority party and the kinds of bills you're able to work with, the kinds of, ways that you may need to compromise and reach across the aisle?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it is a challenge, and I'll be perfectly candid with you. We had to have a special session this last year because the regular session failed to pass the state budget that was viable. So during the special, I guess I could go back to 2015. Sorry about that. I don't mean to jump around. But in 2015, we at least had a group of moderates that worked with us. And I can tell you that for a fact because we were able to pass two significant pieces of legislation, one being Medicaid expansion. We were also able to pass a water compact, which involved negotiating water rights with the Salish Kootenai tribes, the tribes of Montana, and the water rights, navigating water rights between farmers, ranchers, and the tribes in the rural parts of Montana. So it was 30 years in the making. It was arguably the biggest piece of legislation to come through the legislature, along with Medicaid expansion. They were two big accomplishments that we were able to get through with bipartisan effort. It was bipartisan effort, and it was really something incredible to be part of. Then in 2017, it was absolutely what I would describe as the Trump effect. We had similar numbers in the House, not in the Senate. The Senate had, the Dems lost seats in the Senate, but in the House we had the same numbers in the House, but we did not have the moderates. It just seemed like there was a mandate from the right. And so we're in 2015, we could work across the aisle. We could get not just work done, but significant work done. in 2017, it just seemed that there was a mandate that there was going to be nothing going through. I heard that the orders from leadership were that no Democrat bills were to be passed. So I would compare trying to pass legislation in the minority to Sisyphus trying to push the boulder up the mountain, essentially. Yeah. I was able to pass legislation in 2015 as a freshman legislator. That's relatively difficult. I passed what you call a housekeeping bill, but a piece of legislation of my own making to support people with disabilities who earned an income too great for Medicaid benefits, but they have a buy-in in the state, which I also worked on in 2009. I helped shape that policy, but they were held to resource caps, and they were not allowed a longer leave of absence from work. So I just put in some leave of absence extensions and then lifted caps on the amount of income they could earn and the amount of resources they could save and still participate in that Medicaid buy-in. That passed both chambers unanimously. I was really excited about that. I was glad to see that much support, especially for a Medicaid program in a Republican majority legislature. And then last session, I was able to help work with a coalition to set up a guardianship training program within the courts so that we could get people who don't have friends or family to step forward to serve in the capacity of a guardian to feel more comfortable with those responsibilities and get the training they need to not be intimidated. That was not an easy task in 2017. It took me all session long just to get that one bill passed. And then, some of the uglier side of things, I had a very contentious race. In 2015, I unseated a Republican from a district that had been held by Republicans for a long time, including one of our former congressmen. So it was kind of a legacy district, for lack of a better description. And I just worked really hard and took the seat. And I faced what I would basically call it harassment, especially last session, because my previous opponent, the one that I unseated, came back. They put him in an easier district, which, you didn't even have to work to win. And he came back to the legislature. And it was my impression that his goal for the session was to just make my session difficult. He sat in 2 of my 3 committees, and in one of them, I was not even given a seat at the table, essentially. We're supposed to be able to see and hear people who come in and testify at the podium. I was given a seat at the end of a table behind the podium so that I was at the back of the people testifying. Of course, I made a point of order at every committee meeting until they gave me a proper seat. Yeah. These kinds of things, it's just bullying, it's harassment. It's difficult to serve in a minority, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
So things, as you're describing, got more partisan in 2016. What is your sense going into 2018? Is there a lot of energy among the Democrats who are running? Do you think that the Democrats will be able to get back some seats, or that I suspect that the Republicans who win will not be more moderate, given the way everything else in the country seems to be going. But is there a lot of energy among the Democrats?
It's a weird year. We've had a lot of new candidates step forward, say candidates who are further to the left of, say, what you would call establishment Dems. When I ran in 2015, I was probably viewed as a little further to the left than some candidates because I more strongly affiliated myself with a platform like Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders, which you would call a progressive platform. And I don't like putting people in lanes, by the way. I don't think it helps us. We've had new candidates step forward who are formally affiliated with Democratic Socialists of America. And that tells me that there is a lot of energy. It's a different energy, though. So it's not excitement. It's not like when President Obama ran, right? Where I think there was a lot of excitement. I think it was a positive, forward-moving energy, where I think now it's reactionary and there's a lot of anger. The same way that the Women's March occurred in January, this is still a carryover. It's the same energy, kind of like you saw from the Women's March is how I would assess it. So there's energy. It's different than I've ever seen. And I do attribute it to what you would call the Trump effect.
How does that compare to what you're hearing at the doors? What has campaigning been like? Are there a lot of people excited for the kind of message that you're bringing? Is there a lot of anger on both sides? What does that look like on the ground?
It's always a mixed bag. As a woman running, it's always intimidating to go out and knock on doors by myself.